Hello and welcome to another episode of A Wicked Parley. I am your host, Justin, and my fellow lovely co-host, Rose.
Hello!
You know, this has been a rough week.
It has.
Yeah, it's been a rough week. Yeah, for all those of you guys who don't pay too much attention, I actually had a medical episode, which is not super great. Not good.
No, you don't typically get sick, but when you do, oh boy.
Yeah, I'm like a man in most fashions, I get a common cold, knocks me on my ass. The world ends when I get sick. No, I'm joking.
It feels like it.
Yeah, I'm kind of. Hello, host. It's so good to see you again.
Host, hello. It's been some time.
My camera's not on right now, but if I was, you would totally see me going, hey, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on?
Yeah, all right. Well, so, I will try to be more consistent with Twitch, if any of you guys do watch that stuff, which I hope you guys do, because, honestly, it's fun.
Very hard attempt.
Yeah, I will attempt to stay on track with that, but know that, sometimes life just doesn't play nice, and this week it was just one of those things.
Life just decided,
But... Yeah. So,
all right.
But good news is, I'm starting to feel better-ish.
Ooh.
I'm not going to jinx myself, knock on wood. But it's what's going on with me is clearing up a little bit. So, yeah. Anyways, today's episode is titled, When Will People Do Great Things? And my idea for this particular episode kind of was to have a discussion with the audience, have a discussion with Rose about this. So, as we're talking about things, feel free to throw your comments or questions in the chat. We will answer and respond to all of them. Yes, even if they're ridiculous and take us off the lines, host. So go ahead and be wacky if you want to. But I do kind of genuinely want to have just kind of like an interesting conversation about this topic. Mostly because when I was a kid, I was very impressionable. One of the things that I liked to do when I had the opportunity was to plop down in front of a television and watch some History Channel. And sometimes on the History Channel, there'd be really weird, wacky shit. But sometimes there would be things that were weird, but not wacky. And they were like these futurists or various other things. And it always captivated me. And it always made me wonder. I'm like, okay, what are people in the future? What are they going to do? What great things are people going to aspire to achieve or what they're going to do? Because at least to me, it feels like humanity has been on a trajectory of sorts that has exponentially increased in its overall advancements with tools. It wasn't that long ago that powered flight was at best a balloon,
Yeah.
And in the time it took from basically us to get to, kites that had motors on them, roughly about 70 years later, less than that, really, we were putting rocket ships and putting people to the moon. And if you think about the growing pace and everything getting smaller when it comes to technology and computers, computers...
They used to be big, chunky things.
Yeah, they used to take up entire skyscrapers. They would build entire sections, and it'd just be one computer is fucking enormous, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've got them smaller and smaller and smaller to the point now where, a computer can fit in the palm of your hand comfortably.
Yeah, some people do legit use their phones as computers too.
Well, not just computers, not just phones, but there are other types of computers that exist that are really small. And the thing I kind of want to stress about this is that it's uncharted territory. We it almost seems like as much as we have more access to energies and stuff like that,
mm-hmm.
the more crazy shit that we just come up with, where it's our imagination, I always think back to like Star Trek, right? And the early
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek envisioned like a flip communicator, right?
Yeah.
And you talk wherever the hell you want, right?
Yeah.
And it inspired somebody who was watching that to create a cell phone. And now our cell phones are computers as well. You know, they do all these things. And so, like, I'm sure that was not where they were thinking when they first were thinking of the concept of I want to build a communicator too. But it went in a different direction. And I'm curious to to just discuss with you what are some of the things that could potentially go that way. And I know that we have to ground the conversation in some basic facts.
Okay.
And this is what Rose does best. She is
Oh
at her
dear.
heart an academic, and so
Yes.
when we were discussing this over the course of the week, you know, she created some questions that we're going to kind of like bring up and we're going to discuss. It's going to have this kind of grounding effect. But I always I want the viewers at home and I want everyone else to really just put your hats on and think, okay, what's the next great awesome thing we're going to do? And when will you do it? Or when will somebody you know or somebody you hope you will know someday will do it too? I see that host has put some stuff in the chat. Rose,
Yes.
would you mind reading it out?
Host says, "Here we are. Macaroni and cheese from the crock pot slaps. It's dead stupid easy to prep and clean. This is the greatness I strive for."
You know what? You're absolutely right, host. A good friend of mine and his fiance made for me macaroni and cheese out of a crock pot. And oh my God, was it like the most delicious thing I had ever had.
I just want to make this really good beef stew from a crock pot.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So
Hot take. What's up?
Oh, no, go for it.
According to host, hot take, the first PDA prototype was a slab of wood.
Okay.
I'm just curious as to what the acronym stands for.
PDA?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it's like a little small gadget, kind of similar to like a phone.
Is it like a personal digital assistant? Is that it?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, Steve Jobs, he used to like walk around, right? And he had this like little piece of, I don't know if it was wood. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was small. And he basically said, you know, every time they try to throw something in, they're like, does it fit in this? You know, and so it kind of like it progressed things, you know.
That's hilarious.
It forced them to re-engineer or rethink about or limit what they were going to put in the thing.
Fair enough.
I think it was the first iPod. I think is what they were trying to do with it. If I remember right. Personal digital assistant. Yes, you're
okay.
The precursor to the phone. It's like a BlackBerry, but before a BlackBerry.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Like. Anyways, I've seen them before. I just didn't know what they were 100% called, to be perfectly honest. But when you said that, Rose, I was like, got it. You got it right 100% the first time.
Cool.
Okay. All right. So, you know, when it comes down to this,
yes.
There's a couple questions I want to ask you first, and I want to know what you think, and also jump in, host, jump in, anybody who's watching, and if you're watching this in the future, feel free to throw it in the comment section. I will read it and I will respond to you. So please, I want as much communication as we can in this, because and the next several episodes are going to kind of fall in this kind of line of thinking. So I want us to try and be more participatory when it comes to stuff, and I want us to build up a community where we can have fun discussions like this. So let's see what we can do here. All right. So the question I'm going to ask is, you know, when it comes to great things, what do you think it takes to achieve something great? You know, what is involved in doing that, and how long might that take?
Okay. Wait. So, I've got a return question before I can answer that one, unfortunately.
Okay, sure.
Because it's like, you know, it's like, what does it take to achieve greatness? It's like, for one, are you talking milestone based? Are these more objective, or are these more personalized? Because depending on which one you're talking about, because greatness means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So I myself deal with it kind of based off of milestones.
Okay.
So I consider it great once I have, you know, Solved a really tough question because I'm in mathematics. Solving a really tough math question is really like, oh yeah, let's go type of scenario.
Okay.
But not everybody's a math person.
Yeah, no, not me. Like, absolutely not me. Like, I
So
will
it's just like,
cry.
for the most part, the most objective part I can say about, achieving greatness is the drive and the determination to succeed at something that either was really difficult or you just hadn't done it before.
Mm. I mean,
So that's kind of the basis for what I think it is, but
mhm.
I could be wrong because again, I'm more of a milestone person.
Okay, so like when you say milestone, like
Hmm.
let's kind of break down what your response a little bit if you don't mind.
Okay.
So when you say a milestone, for everybody at home, what exactly is a milestone, and what do
Okay.
you like classify a milestone as?
Okay. Okay. So a milestone is a kind of another way of kind of a slightly fancier way of saying kind of a checkpoint or like a goal point type of scenario.
Okay.
If you have your journey from like A to Z,
Hmm.
and Z is like the final end goal, but you want like little milestones in between so it doesn't look so daunting. It's like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, B, checkpoint C, checkpoint D. Each of those are kind of like successing milestones to help you get to the end goal.
Okay. And do you personally use this for your own success journeys?
I typically do so because it's like, for me, it's if I don't feel like I'm doing anything, I get kind of disheartened about it.
Hmm.
So if I have a little bunch of tiny milestones in progress to the big one, it's like, okay, I'm actually doing something rather
Hmm.
than, sitting down.
Hmm.
Like, I know that's what a lot of people do, but for those who can just go straight from like start to end, no
Hmm.
questions asked, props to you.
Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely challenging. Okay, let's take a pause for a second and let's take a look at the chat again. I
Yeah,
see
sure.
that host has
Hello,
put a few things in
host.
there.
Oh, goodness. The first is the question. Wait, did some goober tie a weather balloon to a car to make it fly? Oh, gosh.
If they have, I have not heard this story, but it wouldn't
I'm just like
necessarily
wondering,
be impossible.
maybe.
Yeah, because you can always buy military grade weather balloons, and I think that they have like the lift capacity of something like close to like 1,000 pounds per balloon.
Goodness gracious.
And so theoretically, if you had enough of them, you could lift a car,
Oh, gosh.
and make it fly. Okay, what else is there?
Dan's like nobody's watching.
Oh, that's what he was
Um,
talking about.
yeah. Let's see. Try anything and everything without fear of judgment or failure.
That is a very good statement, host. I agree
Ooh,
with
I
you
like it.
100%. That because honestly, at the end of the day, most people who achieve something great usually were basically deemed odd, strange, or just like not exactly correct. And yeah,
The question of the weather balloon to the car. It's the picture on screen. There's a balloon and a car. I'm not quite sure if it's just
no,
this perspective or not.
it's just a perspective. That's just a big hot air balloon that's being anchored down. There's a car
That would
parked
be
nearby.
hilarious, though.
That would be hilarious. I think if I remember correctly, like, and I could be wrong about this, but I think that there were some tests that were done early in flight, and they'd have like a balloon go up and monitor the flight with
Hmm.
like
Okay,
goggles and like take notes.
fair enough.
So those flights are kind of short too; they're not very long. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
But
So,
yeah, that's generally what I mean about a milestone.
yeah. When it comes down to your like the time frame, do you think that
Yeah.
there's a way to measure that in any predictable sense? Do you like kind of set milestones with an idea of time in mind, or is it and dependent
I
upon
mm,
the goal?
fair enough. Like I do, each of my time scales are based off of whatever goal,
Hmm.
but I do try to keep to my time scales, but I give myself a bit of leeway for larger achievements,
Hmm.
such as with my current program for getting my PhD.
Hmm.
If I followed my original timeline, I was supposed to advance to candidacy at the end of the semester. I'll be lucky if I can do that because my code has been giving me headaches.
Oh no.
So it's just like there is a little bit of leeway on that. I've had a lot of work to do, which unfortunately has made my brain even more fried.
Hmm.
But yes, I do set timescales, time frames
Hmm.
for my goals, but there's some flexibility because life happens.
Yes, and
I'm not going to make it like flexible as in, oh yeah, 5 years away is just fine. It's like not that far. Not that far.
okay, so you're a little more rigid than
Like it's flexible, but not like loosey goosey flexible.
yeah, you're flexible, not flimsy.
Yeah. I'm not
Okay.
gonna bend over backwards trying to make myself happy because that at that point I'm being way too lazy. For myself at least.
At that point, you're being flexible beyond imagination. All right. Well, when it comes down to ideas surrounding
Yeah.
when people will do great things,
Okay.
one of the things that I've always kind of enjoyed when it comes to certain aspects of this topic have to do with science fiction.
Ooh. What
I
about?
yeah, I am a big fan of like Star Trek or other elements of looking at things in the future,
Yeah.
or like what if scenarios.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I always think is kind of interesting about the future when people think about it, and this is obviously tied to when people will do great things,
Okay.
is that they either take the approach that everything in the future is going to be like much better than it is now, or it's going to be much worse.
Oh.
I.e., utopia or dystopia.
Ooh.
and, and the thing I always think about is that has there ever been a point in human history as of yet where we've ever been a utopia, ever had a utopia like society, or has it just been some varying state of dystopia?
I uh
I mean,
hmm.
think about this for
Not
a
a big history buff, so it's just like, eh.
yeah, I know, but like think about this from the end, from like just analyze certain aspects of history, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
today, it is argued that the world is more safe and less violent than it has been probably ever. But yet we
Hmm.
have a full fledged war going on and like conflicts all over the place. So it's
Yeah.
is that statement like someone who's basically like super idealistic, or is it true and we're just like looking at only the negatives because we can?
Hmm. I don't know if it's even we're just looking at the negative, but because we can, it's just we ex I remember hearing somebody talk about why we are so quick to point out negatives and mistakes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's because a lot of people try to, expect that good or at least neutral things are going to happen. So as soon as like something goes negative or wrong, they're just so quick to point it out.
I see.
And because of that, it's really easy to focus on all the negative stuff. It doesn't help with the news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that.
But it's just like that's my only thing to say about that last part of your uh spiel.
Sure.
About the rest though.
Mm-hmm.
Was it more idealistic to say that or was it true? I mean, in some ways, I guess you could say it's a little bit true because unless somebody's, really playing sadistic or barbaric,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's kind of a lot of like clean, like quick and clean, I guess, rather than, messy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still messy, don't get me wrong, but it's a bit cleaner than it was in the past, I would maybe say.
I mean, I think that's true in some parts of the world, but I also think that in other parts of the world it's probably more messy. So it's difficult for me to equate like.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge it because it's like, well, which area are you talking about?
Mhm.
Which it's like because as you said, in some places it's more clean, in some places it's more messy. So it's just like that perspective might have only been from their area.
And I also think population plays a huge role into that assessment
Oh
too.
yeah.
Because I mean, like in some ways, you could say that greatness is the fact that like we are able to feed a massive population, but also there's massive declining birth rates in countries like all over the world. Like I mean, like
Hmm.
look at Japan. I mean, Japan is a classic case of, oh my god, they're just not they're not having relationships anymore. They're not having sex. They're not having children anymore, and like their whole population is aging to a point where it's like, oh, it's scary. So it's like that is a possible future for many people, and so like to me, like I wonder, like, is a person gonna step up and lead these people, in a way that like prevents this tragedy? Well, is this the next great act of Japan, or is Japan as we know it going to die, and a new Japan will rise? That's maybe more multinational, than ever before.
Who knows? Something great's gonna happen. It's just not necessarily good.
Exactly. you know, I also like. I mean, I'm not trying to go down this road because there's a whole bunch of positives that I want to kind of like get to. So
Yeah,
let's just get this negative out of the way.
sure, sure.
Just because something is bad
Yeah,
doesn't mean it's not technically great.
yeah.
Like this is gonna sound super cheesy and like corny as fuck, but like I don't care. Because it's actually kind of true. Um, in the first Harry Potter movie, and
Yes,
if I remember correctly, also in the Harry Potter book, when Harry goes in and gets his wand for the first time from Ollivander,
yes.
um, he basically finds out that his wand is the same kind of wand, is the sister or brother wand to Voldemort's wand, and he makes this whole statement of he did terrible things, but also great. So like
Great but terrible.
exactly great but terrible, and so like I think it is also equally possible that the next great act might be an act of terror or destruction. And while that's an awful thing to think about, it is a real
It's
possibility.
it is. It's important to, keep it, in the know
Hmm.
rather than stick your head in the sand.
Yeah. Well, I see Host has got a few things. Let's go ahead and turn to him for a second and see what he's got.
Yeah. So something earlier when we were talking about, companies was, remember, Tesla wanted to build a death laser.
Who says he didn't? And the government just didn't seize it.
When we were talking about the milestones, Host says that they write everything down, outline the goals and steps from the beginning, then
Hmm.
check them again later to see what needs to change or how to get back on track. This was also for the whole timing thing.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, honestly, that's actually a really good observation, Host, and I'm glad you do that because that's a critical step,
Yeah,
I think, in being able to be successful. You have to be organized, and you
yeah,
have to be methodical about how you want to achieve things. And so, definitely, by doing that, you are very likely to succeed, or at least get close to the goals that you set.
yeah. Let's see. When we were talking about utopias and dystopias, they add that technically utopia and dystopia are relative. Everyday citizens right now eat like old European kings, and more people right now have the big sad compared to the roaring 20s.
Um, I would say that that's an interesting observation, and I think that's certainly
I like the
true.
way it's written.
Yeah, it's certainly true of Western society. However, I would like to point out that the vast majority of the world's population does not live in the West. They actually, India, China, are some places that have a very large population, and while you can argue that they have fought very hard, at least in China's case, to try and create a thriving middle class, there is still billions of people who starve and live without running water every day. And so I think the idea that everyone, everyday citizens, eats like European kings, I think only speaks to a certain demographic. It doesn't speak to the wider experience of most people. And I also think that the idea of the big sad, is also applicable to the West, but I'm not so sure how applicable it is to the rest of the world. I mean, I think it would vary dramatically from region to region, and I think that some would be more closely aligned than others, and then there'd be others with big differences. Um, but anyways, I mean, I know it's a bit of a joke, but it also there's a bit of seriousness there, and I think it's important to point those things out. And yeah, I mean, if Japan becomes Cyberpunk 2050, I mean, I might move there. That
As
sounds
long as
kind of
it's
fun.
without the glitches.
No, glitches included. Go for
Oh
it.
gosh.
Hey, come on.
Just
I
glitch
want,
through
I,
the
I want to
floor.
press a button and Laura just drives to me. That'd be great. Have like a bike that can store endless weapons inside it. Are you kidding
Oh
me? It's
gosh.
freaking amazing. Anyways, but yeah, let's go ahead and get back onto it. Is there anything that you'd like to ask me about when it comes to this particular subject?
Hmm. Let's see, let's see. So we've talked about, like what is great. Oh, great could mean good or terrible and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important to the world or
Ooh.
to people in general?
Why is
Like,
it?
why is it like it has a name to it? People strive to achieve great things. Like, in your opinion, what makes it so important to people?
I'm gonna be honest. My answer is not going to be sufficient. I'm going to be very clear.
Okay.
This is most definitely one of these things that I can't speak for everyone. Obviously,
Fair enough. I
but
mean,
I can
I
only
wasn't
speak.
expecting that type of answer.
Yeah, all I can speak from is from my own experience and
Yeah,
my
of
own
course.
expectations. So like that, I'm going to
Yeah.
put this in that box so that way it's clear to everyone who's watching
Itty
too, and
little
anyone who
bugs.
watches in the future. Um, I think it's important to the nature of humans to be able to chase something, to strive for
Ah, yeah.
something more than they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people will have a strong emotional reaction when they are presented with a circumstance that becomes routine, that becomes simple, that there's not a hope for something greater, that they don't have the ability to aspire to achieve something of note or to get out of whatever struggles they may find themselves in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important that we have this idea of greatness and that we try our best to strive towards it because it allows us to work through incredibly difficult times as well as gives us motivation to endure incredible hardships that inevitably happens to everybody at some point in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, I think it's important for greatness to exist, and I think it's important for us to think about greatness, and it gives us the means by which we can strive for more than what we are. At least that's my 2 cents when it comes
I
to
mean,
it.
fair enough, fair enough. I've got something similar
Yeah, I mean,
when I asked that.
all right. Well, what's your? I mean, you say it's similar. What areas are similar and what areas aren't?
So similarly, I do agree that achieving something great is something to strive for, to something to keep you busy and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly, the reasoning for that is so that people don't get bored.
Sure.
Because with everything great, if you do it, so it begs the question of is something great a one-time thing or is it like something you can do repeatedly and whatnot?
Mm-hmm.
Which brings up the question of, you know, if you continuously do a great thing over and over again, when does that stop being great and just becomes the norm?
Okay.
So you constantly kind of have to up it, like up the scaling, up
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. Because for me, it's just like if I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, I'm gonna get bored. I'm not gonna have any motivation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's most people too. I mean,
Yeah, so it's just like you need to do something out of the norm.
mm-hmm.
And even if it's just like one thing out of the norm, it could be great because hey, you did something different. You enhanced your life.
I want to circle back to something that you were talking about earlier when talking about milestones, and
Okay.
I think milestones can sometimes be confused with the idea of achievement. And the
Okay.
reason why I think that they can get confused with that is because I think sometimes people will look for what they've done, like meaning that they kind of like imagine yourself if you could visually turn your head and look back at the path you were on and you
Yeah.
look at the previous milestones and each of those milestones had a level of achievement attached to them
Hmm.
and people will look to those achievements and create milestones in their head associating with that. And then that way, when they're looking towards the future, they know, okay, this is the thing that I'm going to achieve. This is the thing that I'm aiming for. Which isn't necessarily a good idea, because I think that it makes the assumption that your milestones are going to be predictable. And I don't think that's necessarily always true. And it would worry me if someone were to set milestones with that idea in mind without at least being prepared for the idea that things may not go according to plan and that things might not appear the same way. And the reason why I kind of wanted to mention that at all was because there was this book that I read like a while ago, Grit, The Power of Passion, Perseverance. It's a really good book. And that particular book basically details out a bunch of things that happen to various important figureheads in society. It kind of can show the struggle that certain people went through. And in some ways, it can be kind of like, okay, hey, we accomplished this, we did this, so maybe this is how achievement looks or can look for you. And I don't necessarily know if that achievement is necessarily, I mean, it definitely could be, I want to put this out, it could be, but I don't know if it is necessarily greatness. And I'm not sure that that's the barometer by which we should set it, because it feels somewhat limiting. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like, okay, if we're limiting our imagination of what we can achieve by the achievements of others, then what does that say about us?
Kind of almost feels as if you're trying to say you can only be as great as the ones who came before you, type of scenario.
Exactly, yeah. And I just don't think that's true. I mean,
No.
The biggest things that I'd say is, when it comes to it, is look at some of the marvelous physicists and mathematicians and scientists who came out of the 20th century.
Yeah.
You know, Bohr, Einstein, you know, there's so many people. I mean, like, people don't like Oppenheimer, but I mean, hey, you know, but I mean, hey, you can't deny the fact that splitting the atom, creating an atomic bomb wasn't exactly a great act. There's
frightening and terrifying, but great.
Yeah. There are dangerous, crazy implications, but there's also like good things too that could come from it. And maybe we just haven't figured out how to make all those things good yet. But I mean, for God's sakes, the person who created nitroglycerin, got the Nobel Peace Prize. So I mean, like, hey, or maybe I have that backwards. Maybe he created the Nobel Peace Prize. I might be having that mixed up. I mean, correct me in the chat if anyone knows. Might be having that mixed up. But like, the point of the matter is that, like, sometimes achievements, both good and bad based on how your perception is, doesn't change the fact that it's great, but they also operate outside the predictable paradigms. No one in 1910 could have been like, yeah, you could split the atom and create one of the most destructive forces like known to man. Like, nobody in the early 1800s would have envisioned that that gravity could be warped and bent. That space-time was a thing that could be influenced. Yeah. I mean, look at the work of Stephen Hawking and his look into black holes and stuff like that, and some of the crazy equations he came up with in his lifetime. No one would have imagined that, 100 years ago. Well, no one would have imagined it 200 years ago. I think Einstein kind of probably imagined something close to it, to be perfectly honest. So, like, there are these people who operate completely outside the box, and I think the last person we knew for a fact that probably would have fit this category probably would have been like a Da Vinci, or a Galileo kind of type person. These were the last of the people in the classical histories that we know about that for sure would have impacted the way we think about things. I mean, you could think of Greek philosophers in the past maybe as they had a say on things, but But the truth is that like all the people who came before us, that limits us if we only focus on their greatness. If when we're trying to achieve something more, we can't think about them necessarily. I think we need to be more altruistic and selfless in some instances. And
I mean, that's where I say the whole determination and drive goes in.
yeah, but like people's drives, I mean, like are all over the place. I mean, most people, their drive is either to provide for a family or to make an incredible amount of money. You know, like
I mean, in their definition, in their perspective, in their lifetime, that might be considered great.
okay, but like if you okay, let's put it this way. Do you
Okay.
particularly think that any person who is a CEO of a company or a bank today is someone who's doing great things?
Hmm? Just because I don't think so doesn't mean that other people don't think so.
Okay, but let's take another look. Do you think that how many people do you think really think that person's doing great things? Like great, not like oh they're doing good for themselves. I mean like they're great. They're achieving something more holistic.
I mean, probably a handful of people.
Okay, all right. Well, I think I disagree with you on that. To be perfectly honest.
Okay. I mean, you
But
don't
I
have to agree with me because
yeah
it's just like, again, it's all based on perspectives.
yeah, but I respect your opinion, and you know I mean I think that's a different thing for me. Here's a question for you. Do you
Okay.
think it's possible to replicate greatness?
I mean, if you're only trying to match it, probably.
Okay. Do you think that it's important to replicate greatness?
Scenario, to be honest, because it's like if you're trying to just recreate something that works and improve on it,
Mm-hmm.
you'd have to be able to replicate it first.
Okay.
So it's just like if you're trying to do something new, then probably not. If you're trying to expand upon it, build upon it, turn that greatness into something more, you kind of have to.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. I mean, like I look at like the people who work on like certain physics problems, and I often wonder, you know, if maybe the reason why no major breakthrough has occurred in like the last several like decades isn't because like they're not smart enough to do it, but because they're so like they're almost pigeonholed into one ideology, and it's preventing them from looking at the bigger picture.
Potentially.
Yeah, I think that that's something that probably gets confused sometimes. So like, I mean, I guess my next question. This is a question, I guess, for the audience, it's for you as well. But what does greatness look like to you guys, to everybody? Like, how do you categorize greatness? So that way, maybe we can figure out and pinpoint and identify maybe some places where greatness might be beginning to happen. I also see that host has mentioned some things in the chat. Do you
Yeah.
do you want to like comment on that before we answer that question?
Sure, I'm probably gonna need a repeat of the question, not gonna lie.
Sure.
Let's see. Dynamite Man saw his obituary before he died. A lot of people saw Big Boom as Big Bad. Dynaman then threw his money in an attempt to get people to love him. Oh my goodness.
That's unfortunate.
Oh gosh. That's like wholly unfortunate, but like the way that's written just makes it so.
It sounds awful, honestly. Like I'm sorry. I feel sorry
It
for the
just,
guy.
yeah. Goodness gracious.
Oh man, poor dude. All right. Well, okay. So this is going to be the last question of the night. All right.
Okay.
So, and my question basically is how do you define greatness, and
How do I define greatness and how can what?
and how can we use your definition to potentially find greatness in society currently?
I don't think you're gonna like my answer. I don't think you're gonna like my answer. I can tell you that now.
All right, all right. Well, I'm gonna say this right now. The Nobel Peace Prize was the dynamite thing. That's what the host is saying.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so the nitroglycerin thing I think might actually be a thing then, because I remember it was one of the two. If it wasn't
Okay.
that, okay. So all right, what is the answer I'm not going to like?
Because for me, greatness is just being able to achieve something new, something different that you hadn't been able to achieve before.
Okay,
It's something that you can kind of feel proud of being able to do, even if not everybody agrees with it.
okay,
Because for me, greatness is something you do, something you try to achieve, strive and achieve so that you can kind of better yourself, even if, unfortunately, in some cases, it might go against what society wants.
okay. So that answers part of the question. It doesn't answer the whole question though.
What was the other one?
The other part is how can we use your definition to find somebody who is basically on the verge of greatness?
Yeah, that's the part that's definitely not gonna like.
Okay.
Because it's like my version of great is not going to be anybody else's version of great.
Well,
So
you
what
don't
I
know
could
that.
consider a person to, be coming on the verge of greatness, somebody else might just think it's like, oh, that's normal.
Okay. All right. Well, what is your what is this hot take that everyone's going to disagree with?
No, that's that's the thing. Because it's like my definition of greatness isn't one that everybody agrees with.
Well, I don't think anybody's definition is going to get a unanimous that I agree with
Yeah,
on.
exactly. So it's just like the whole to take an example that you thought up was, a CEO is like the things that they're doing could like according to you won't be considered great, but like depending on the company, becoming a CEO of a certain company could actually be considered great because of depending on the regulations and stuff involved.
Okay. I see why I wouldn't like it, but okay. All right, that's fair. That's
I told
fair.
you, I told you you wouldn't like it.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I actually here's my take on this. I think the next person who's going to do something great is going to be the most famous person in social media, whoever that ends up being. There are people who make billions of dollars because people watch their videos, and I have a hard time wrapping my head around that concept because it's just like it's so out there. But then I look at people like Mr. Beast, right?
Mhm.
Who uses his influence and his wealth to help out people. And I think, well, if a person like that exists in this space,
Okay.
and a person like that is willing to basically go the extra mile to help out everybody, then that speaks volumes about that person's character, and it means that the potential for great amounts of good are out there. And so, to me, because so many people use social media as a platform to live, communicate, and because of how much influence it has today, I think that the next great thing is going to come from there. And I think it's going to be a positive and not a negative. I don't exactly know what shape it'll take, and I don't know exactly when. I just think that this is a force of tremendous power, and if harnessed correctly, it can do great things. It can also do terrible things. um, I appreciate what you participating in the chat, host. It's been awesome. Thank you for sharing about the Merchant of Death. That's an interesting thing to say. If you guys are interested in checking out more content by us, please come check out the Twitch live streams. We definitely do them every Sunday at the very least at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you want to jump in, say hi, see what game we're playing, offer some suggestions for future games, we'll be happy to hear them and everything else. And then next week we're going to be having a fun episode too, so hopefully you guys stay tuned for that. And you got any other comments, Rose?
Thank you all for joining us. We are almost to, 2-year anniversary? 1-year anniversary here?
It's almost 2-year anniversary. Yeah.
Let's go!
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll all see you in the next one. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. See you in the next one. Later.